Hey everyone, Kurt with RC Digging 2401. Well, this video is going to cover some pretty heavy modifications done to the 6015, because if you've taken a look at where your, especially your track ESCs are located, they're located underneath this steel plate that runs from side to side, front to rear. And there is no access to that, to underneath the plate, so you can get to the ESCs. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do to change that up so that there's always access to those ESCs. And if you have a 6015, one of the problems that I've run into with mine, and my brothers had the same problem, is that the ESC for the pump will intermittently stop working. And with that plate modification, we're going to be able to access that ESC and the lines a lot better. So I've already taken a lot of the top components off, and I'm just going to go over it real quick because there is kind of a process to it. But what I'm going to show you here first are some of the things that are going to be switched out. Is we've got a bidirectional 50 amp ESC for the tracks, and I've extended the battery lines, signal lines have gotten extended, and when we measure out how long they actually need to be, then I'll put the 3.5s on the ends and cut them to length. I've got a new quick run 120 amp ESC, a brushless ESC. I've used these before, they're pretty much bulletproof. And then while we're at it, we're going to have the tracks separated from the body. It's a great time to replace the slip ring. Now the slip ring sits in the center, right down in here, and these are your lines coming from the ESCs, and these are your lines going down to your tracks. And I've already put the 3.5s on, bullet connectors, and so for that part we're good to go. Alright, so the next thing we're going to remove is this cover right here that goes over your hydraulic lines. And there are, let's see, there's 2 fasteners on the right side and 1 fastener on the left side. But let's pull that up and get it out of the way. Next, we're going to pull this cover off, and there is 1 screw that goes right down in that hole. And then there is another screw. It's kind of hard to get this to come in focus, but it's right there. And you can't just pull these screws out. They're little cap screws. I think 2 or 2.5 millimeter. I don't remember which. But you have to slide it back. You have to slide this whole cover straight back because of this. There's 1 on each side. If you try to just lift it up, well, you're not going to get it to lift up because of that. And it actually works very well. So just give it a little pull back, and then from there you'll be able to lift it up. Okay, now you got the floor to the battery compartment. There's 4 fasteners there, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I tape everything, all the fasteners, right to the component. It's a good way not to lose it. And this is what you have at this point. So this is the next one to come off. And with this, just wiggle it back and then lift it up. And for the 6015s that have this rocker switch, it's pretty handy. I took a photograph of how the lines went in, and I also marked them. This is a big excess that they just wire tied, so I'm going to shorten that up. I'm going to cut all that excess out and put a connector in there. And then I just started unplugging all the leads for sound module, lights, and that way I can come back to it and throw it all back together pretty quickly. And it also helps that a lot of the end connectors are different. Alright, same with this piece. Just slide it back and lift it up. There's no electrical components fastened to this, so that one's pretty easy. And then the next one is the cab. And depending on how old your 6015 is, there's different variations on how they put these things together at the factory. But with mine, the the seat and console and all that stuff is double-sided taped right to the floor, and there's two screws. One goes here, one goes there. Two cap screws. Pull those out, and then again, you got that piece, hooks in there, and then you got a straight piece that goes on that side. And so to loosen this, I had to take a hammer, a small hammer, little hobby hammer. I put some tape on the end so I didn't mar the tape, and I tapped it back right on the edge of the cab here and there. And I was finally able to get this to lift up. I've already disconnected lines, and you got your warning light up there. And so this is the long line that I mentioned I'm going to shorten up. And then I've got to pop this whole piece off. And this is the plate that's going to get heavily modified. So we still have the pump and motor to lift. We got to get the receiver, speakers, sound module, all that lifted up and removed. I think I'm just going to take the fan out. I really don't see that fan doing a whole lot. When we did my brother's 6015, he chose not to put his fan in, and we put a temp gun on the pump and some of the hydraulic lines, and it was just fine. So I really don't think that that's providing much cooling capability to the hydraulic fluid. And down there, right here, is the ESC that serves the pump and the motor, and that's going to get replaced with that one. And we're going to lift the entire floor up, take it to the plasma cutter, and we're going to modify this thing so that everything is easily accessible. There's the servo block is going to be coming up. You can see there's a cap screw. Whoops. Cap screw right there. Get a light on it. And then same with the other side. And you really don't have to. There it is. Do a whole lot with this. Just take those screws out and the whole thing lifts up. The pump and motor, we're going to disconnect that and set that off to the side, and then start doing some modifications on this plate. Okay, the next thing that's going to be removed is this big radiator cover, and that's another reason why I don't think that fan really does a whole lot, is because there's a radiator already here. So to remove that, just wiggle it forward, slide it off. There's nothing else inside there, and there's a radiator. Pretty cool. Simple. I think that's where just about all the cooling takes place. And I forgot to mention that the radiator cover, I'm going to have a heck of a time getting this to come in focus, but there's one 2.5 millimeter here, and there's one 2.5 millimeter there. So corresponding on the cover itself, that's what it looks like right there. And then for this component, it's kind of hard to see it from all the dirt, but okay, here you can see one. That's a 2.5. It's the exact same fastener as the cover that we just took off. And there's the other one. Alright, my bad. There is one more right there. So I'll loosen that up. Once you get those two screws and that third one right there pulled out, this will lift up, and it's not too bad. But for the radiator, to lift that up off the floor plate so we have access to it, there is a screw here. It's underneath the hydraulic line, and there is another one right down there. At this point you can see where the manufacturers put a couple washers underneath the right side of the valve block, and now also there's a couple more right there, at least one, but they got that shimmed up. You want to draw down all of your fluid. In truth, it'd probably be a good time just to change the fluid, and so that's what I'm doing here. Got the old syringe with a 4-inch or 4.5 inch, maybe even a 5-inch syringe on the end, and of course that's your tank. But I'm just drawing out all the fluid and getting this thing ready to start separating lines. Alright, so I'm in the process of separating this return line from the tank, and I'm going to separate this line from the servo block, and then I should be able to lift this with the pump and motor and the filter, and this will be kind of isolated on its own. One thing to mention is when you separate these lines, don't lose your washer right on the ends. You know, if you do, like this one here is brass, you can get another brass washer, but it's kind of a pain in the butt if you start to have to replace parts that you end up losing. But this one here, I just zip tied up out of the way. I think this one's going to be just fine as it is. It'll give me the ability to lift up the valve block as high as it needs to go. Coming to the rear of the excavator, I'm going to start marking all the servo lines, and just so it's easier to get things set back up again. I'm thinking about switching over to the Paladin EV or the Paladin PL18 Lite transmitter. I've got a PL18 Light EV. That's a wonderful transmitter. I already have 2 models on that one. I don't want to go 3. But I haven't made up my mind. But for right now, I'm going to mark all these lines so that when it comes time to plug them in, I can just do it quickly and be done. I just completed tagging all of the lines, because when you get these machines from the factory does not take any time, oftentimes, to make the lines neat and orderly. This was just a jumbled mess, so I'll straighten that out. And I ended up zip tying this line. I'll cut that tail off, but I zip tied that up because it was kind of belching some hydraulic fluid. But outside of that, I got to pull this off yet, and all of this is loose and ready to come up. So I'm getting pretty close to being able to pull this plate. It's one piece, and you can see down here, way under there, that's where your ESCs are for your tracks. You can't even get to that. And then you can see right down there, and right below that is your slip ring, this thing. And I'll show you that in another part coming up. But it's kind of an involved process, but once you get it done, this machine's bulletproof, and if you ever have to work on it again, it's easy to get to everything. So I'll get this guy pulled up tomorrow and his console, take all these top components, hydraulic components off, and pull up this plate. Thanks for watching.